The Noctua NH-D9L chromax.black is the all-black variant of a well-known small form factor CPU cooler, the NH-D9L. While not a new model, this CPU cooler and especially the chromax.black variant is more relevant than ever as small form factor systems are making a comeback and the CPUs are getting hotter and hotter. However, looking at the price of $75, can this little cooler still be competitive enough? The Noctua NH-D9L chromax.black is a small form factor air CPU cooler that is equipped with just a single 92mm fan but can accommodate up to 3 92mm fans if you so desire. In terms of the design, this CPU cooler does have a lot going for it, starting with the small heatsink that is painted all black to match the chromax.black theme, as well as its mounting system which has been color coded as well. Speaking of the heatsink, it has a dual tower symmetric design with the fan installed in the middle, but thanks to its dual tower structure, it can accommodate up to 2 more fans if you so desire. The symmetrical design of the heatsink is a good thing because it means you can install the cooler in any orientation you desire without making a change in the cooler's performance and heat dissipation properties. Speaking of heat dissipation, the heatsink uses no less than 70 aluminum cooling fins or around 35 fins per heatsink tower. These are shaped in such a way to allow for easy installation of the fan or fans if we're talking about a push-pull configuration. In addition, the edges of the cooling fins are sanded smooth and will not cause any damage if touched. To move the heat around the heatsink, the NH-D9L uses 4 copper-made heat pipes, which are nickel-plated for a better look and added durability. However, over the plating, Noctua has added the chromax.black paint to match the rest of the CPU cooler. The before-mentioned heat pipes have an outer diameter of 6mm and are arranged in the U shape to facilitate the heat dissipation and to make full contact with all the cooling fins. The base plate of the CPU cooler is made from the same nickel-plated copper as the heat pipes, but the nickel plating is visible, as the base plate needs to have optimal contact with the surface of the CPU. The surface of the base plate has a subtle radiant pattern left from the manufacturing process. This will not affect the evenness of the thermal compound in any way. The base plate of the heat pipes of the CPU cooler make direct contact with each other and are actually soldered behind the base plate. This ensures the best thermal transfer between 2 pieces of metal and thus the best cooling performance that this CPU cooler can deliver. The fan used with the NH-D9L chromax.black is another banger of a product, the Noctua NF A9 chromax.black. A 92mm fan that has a speed range of 400 and 2000 RPM. Thanks to its PWM functionality and 4-pin connector, this fan can be controlled via the software or a fan hub with no issues whatsoever. Other features found on this fan include the usual things: rubber pads on both sides of each corner of the frame. While this will prevent scratching the cooling fins of the heatsink, its main purpose is dampening any of the vibrations that might appear from the spinning motion of the fan impellers and bearing. In terms of the accessories though, you do get enough to get you going and keep you going for a long time. It's a neat feature that Noctua places the accessories in a separate box and even prints a diagram of all its items inside for you to better organize everything. You get a user manual, a tube of thermal compound, a Phillips screwdriver, a metal case badge, a low noise speed adapter, and the parts that consists of the mounting system, a backplate, plastic spacers that are socket specific, don't forget that, screws, bolts, and of course the fan clips. The installation of this CPU cooler cannot be made simpler. You first take the backplate and install the studs with the plastic C-clips. After you place those in the correct spacers for your CPU socket, you install the backplate at the back of the motherboard CPU area and studs will go through the motherboard to the front. Then you place the correct plastic spacers over the studs and install the mounting bars while securing them with the Phillips nuts. Once those are in place and secured, you apply the thermal compound on the CPU surface and place the CPU cooler over the CPU and the mounting bars. You line up the spring-loaded screws and secure the CPU cooler in its place. You finally have to install the fan inside the heatsink and connect it to one of the motherboard fan headers. And with the cooler installed and powered on, you can see just how small this CPU cooler truly is when used on a full ATX motherboard. This is great for clearance, but not so great if you are looking to bling up your system. Nevertheless, the NH-D9L chromax.black looks great and will match most if not all motherboards that are on the market right now. In terms of RAM memory clearance, things cannot get better than this, as the CPU cooler does not even reach the RAM slots, let alone interfere with them, which is great news for those that are using TAL RAM modules. However, when it comes to graphics card clearance, with this CPU cooler installed, you get around 46mm of space between the side of the heatsink and the backplate of the graphics card, enough space to reach the M.2 socket that is underneath the CPU socket usually. For testing the CPU coolers, we are using an Intel i7 13700K. Running at its factory boost frequency and voltage, while usually we run the CPU with its original power limits of 250 watts. In the case of small form factor CPU coolers, we will limit the power of the CPU to 150 watts. Otherwise, no small CPU cooler will be able to perform or showcase its cooling performance. For all tests, the ambient temperature is set at 26 degrees Celsius. And in this test, the NH-D9L chromax.black reached a maximum temperature of 94 degrees Celsius with the CPU in a heavy benchmark. While on the last place, this result is not surprising at all, as we are dealing with such a small CPU cooler that has just enough heat dissipation area to do its job with a large CPU such as the 13000K. With an i5 or something close in terms of heat and power limit, the NH-D9L chromax.black will do a lot better. Nevertheless, it was able to handle 150 watts worth of heat, and that's respectable for such a small CPU cooler. In terms of the sound and noise output, the NH-D9L chromax.black is just like its regular counterpart, does impressively well for a CPU cooler that is using a fan running at 2200 RPM, as this CPU cooler has a noise output of no higher than 38 decibels, a value measured with the measuring device placed at a standard distance of 10 cm from the CPU cooler and the system. And for your enjoyment, here is a noise sample of the actual CPU cooler running inside the system from a standstill to the maximum speed of 2200 RPM. And going back to the sound, for such a low value in terms of decibels from a fan that, for all intents and purposes, should not be this quiet given it's spinning at 2200 RPM and pushes its air through a stack of cooling fins, showcases not only the good design and the good materials that Noctua has used when making the CPU cooler. Looking at the results, it's pretty clear that the NH-D9L chromax.black is a great small form factor CPU cooler if you are running a small form factor system that is adequately configured to be efficient in both power usage, temperature and performance. What I mean by this is simple. Such a small CPU cooler cannot and will not handle upwards of 170 watts of power from a CPU. Maybe the cooling performance will be slightly improved by adding 2 more 92mm fans in a triple push-pull configuration, but that really defeats the purpose of the NH-D9L chromax.black, which has always been small footprint, low noise operation and good clearance around the CPU socket. The pricing is good for what you get. I mean, you do get a CPU cooler that for all intents and purposes will last you a lifetime if you do the minimal maintenance on the fan. The build quality is top-notch as per usual, Noctua standard, and the installation cannot be made simpler, especially with the included user manual and the Phillips screwdriver. You're also getting a 6-year warranty and the excellent Noctua support for future CPU sockets, which makes this CPU cooler even more good value when you look at the entire package. Thanks for watching.